Most people over 60 are told the same thing when their digestion starts to fail them. Just eat more fiber and drink more water. It sounds sensible. It sounds safe. But here is what nobody tells you. Fiber and water alone do not protect your independence when your gut has quietly changed with age. In fact, for some older adults, piling on more fiber on top of a struggling gut makes the bloating, the gas, and the discomfort worse, not better. Here is something that gastroenterology clinics see every single day. After the age of 60, the community of bacteria living in your gut becomes measurably less diverse. Large clinical studies on aging and the microbiome have shown this shift again and again. The friendly bacteria that used to keep everything moving smoothly begin to thin out, and the less helpful ones move in. So today, I am going to give you 5 specific foods that support your digestion naturally after 60. Not vague advice. 5 named foods with exact amounts and exact timing. And I am going to give you the one insight about your gut that a rushed appointment almost never has time to explain. The number 1 food on this list is something almost nobody talks about in connection with digestion. Stay with me until the end, because that one food can change how your gut feels over the next 10 years. Let me tell you why your own doctor probably has not walked you through this. A typical appointment lasts about 12 minutes. In 12 minutes, a doctor can check your vitals, review your prescriptions, and maybe answer one pressing question. There is simply no time left over to sit down and explain how your digestion actually works. There is no time to explain why it changed after 60 or what to eat instead. Prevention is slow, patient work. A 12-minute appointment does not have room for it, and that is not your doctor's fault. It is how the system is built. I am not here to sell you a supplement or scare you into a course. This channel exists to give you the science a 12-minute appointment never has time to cover. I do not want your credit card. I want you to understand your own body well enough to make your own decisions. That is the whole mission here, and it is the reason this channel exists. And the stakes are higher than most people realize. Poor digestion is not just about discomfort after a meal. When your gut struggles, you absorb fewer nutrients from the food you eat. That means weaker muscles, more fatigue, and a body less able to keep you steady on your feet. Digestion is quietly tied to whether you stay strong enough to live on your own terms. So if you are over 60 and you have noticed your stomach just is not what it used to be, type your age and your country in the comments right now. I read them, and they shape what I cover next. Now let me explain the one mechanism behind everything we are about to discuss. Please do not skip this section. It is the key to everything that follows. If you understand this one idea, every food on this list will make immediate sense. Think of your gut as a slow river with a whole city living along its banks. The trillions of bacteria in your intestine are that city. They break down your food, they make certain vitamins, and they keep the current flowing at a healthy pace. When the river runs well, waste moves through, and nothing stagnates. But as you age, the water level drops and the current slows. Fewer helpful residents live along the banks. Food sits longer than it should, and that is when the bloating and sluggishness begin. Every food I am about to give you does one job. It feeds and restocks that city along the river, so the current flows the way it did when you were younger. If this is already making sense to you, tap the like button so more seniors can find it. That one small tap is what teaches the platform to show this to someone else who needs it tonight. Let me start the countdown at number 5, and this is one most people get completely wrong. Number 5 is ground flaxseed, not whole flaxseed and not flaxseed oil. Ground. Here is why it works. Flaxseed carries a special kind of fiber that turns into a soft gel when it meets water in your gut. Picture greasing a rusty hinge that has been squeaking for years. That gel coats the inside of your intestine and helps everything glide through instead of catching and dragging. It also gently feeds those helpful bacteria along the riverbank we talked about. Whole flaxseed cannot do this because the hard shell passes straight through you undigested. Only the ground form releases what your gut actually needs. Nutrition researchers studying digestive health have consistently found that ground flaxseed helps regulate bowel movements and eases mild constipation in older adults. This is not a fringe idea. It is one of the most repeatedly confirmed findings in everyday digestive nutrition, and it is why you will find flaxseed recommended in dietitian offices around the world. So here is your protocol. Start with 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed per day, not more, mixed into oatmeal, yogurt, or a glass of water. Give it a full week before you even think about increasing. Then, if you feel ready, move up to 2 tablespoons a day. And here is the error almost everyone makes. They take flaxseed without enough water, and that gel dries out and makes things worse. Every tablespoon of ground flaxseed needs a full glass of water alongside it. That is not optional. That is the whole mechanism. Now, a safe way to begin. Sprinkle it on food you are already eating rather than taking it on an empty stomach. If you notice any cramping, drop back to half a tablespoon and stay there. Sharp or worsening pain means stop, not push through, and check with your doctor. Pair your flaxseed with a warm drink first thing in the morning. Here is why that pairing works. Warmth and fluid together stimulate the natural reflex that gets your bowel moving after a night of rest. So the flaxseed arrives exactly when your gut is most ready to use it. The timing does half the work for you, but flaxseed can only smooth the path. It cannot restock the good bacteria that have thinned out over the years. For that, we need a food that brings living reinforcements, and that is exactly what number 4 does. And keep number 1 in the back of your mind, because flaxseed and the crown food work as a team. Number 4 is plain kefir. Kefir is a fermented milk drink, thinner than yogurt, and it is one of the richest everyday sources of living beneficial bacteria you can buy. Think of it this way. If flaxseed greases the hinge, kefir moves new residents back into the city along your river. Yogurt has some of these bacteria. Kefir has many more kinds, and more variety is exactly what an aging gut is losing. Those living cultures settle in and help crowd out the troublemakers. Large studies on fermented foods have repeatedly linked regular kefir intake to improved digestion and a healthier balance of gut bacteria. Researchers keep returning to fermented foods for exactly this reason, because the effect on the aging gut shows up so consistently across different populations. Here is your protocol. Start with half a cup of plain, unsweetened kefir once a day, ideally with a meal. Choose plain every time, because the flavored versions are loaded with sugar that feeds the wrong bacteria. After 1 week, if it agrees with you, work up to 1 full cup a day. Go slowly, because introducing a flood of new bacteria too fast can cause a day or 2 of gas while your gut adjusts. That settling is normal, and it passes. A safe note here. If you are lactose sensitive, kefir is often easier to tolerate than milk, because the fermentation already breaks down much of the lactose. Still, start with just a few sips the first day, and if you take medication that suppresses your immune system, talk to your doctor before adding live culture foods. Pair your kefir with the flaxseed from number 5. Here is why they belong together. The living bacteria in the kefir arrive with the flaxseed fiber to feed on, so the newcomers have a meal waiting the moment they land. Bacteria plus their food establish a colony far better than either does alone. Now, living bacteria are wonderful, but they need the right food waiting for them deeper down, or they will not stay. That is the gap number 3 fills. Number 3 is cooked, cooled potatoes, and this one surprises almost everyone. Here is the science. When you cook a potato and then let it cool in the refrigerator, some of its starch changes into what is called resistant starch. Your body cannot digest it in the usual way, so it travels all the way down to your lower gut, where it becomes the favorite meal of your good bacteria. Remember the city along the river. Resistant starch is like delivering a truckload of groceries straight to the residents so they thrive and multiply. Kefir brings the residents. This feeds them, so they stay. Clinical nutrition research has consistently shown that resistant starch supports the growth of beneficial gut bacteria and improves digestive regularity. This is a well-established area of study, and the cooling trick has been confirmed in laboratory measurements again and again, which is why you can trust such a humble food to do real work. Here is your protocol. Cook a potato however you like, boiled or baked, then refrigerate it for at least 12 hours before eating. Aim for about one small cooled potato, roughly the size of your fist, a few times a week. You can eat it cold in a salad or gently reheat it, because the resistant starch mostly survives a light warming. The mistake people make is eating potatoes fresh and hot every time, which gives you none of this benefit. The cooling step is the whole point, a safe modification. If you are watching your blood sugar, the cooling actually helps because resistant starch raises blood sugar less than a hot potato does. Still, if you take medication for diabetes, talk to your doctor before making potatoes a regular habit and keep the portion to that fist size. Any unusual discomfort means stop and check in. Pair your cooled potato with a little olive oil and herbs rather than butter. Here is the reason. The gentle fat helps you feel satisfied on a smaller portion, and it slows the release of the starch just enough to keep your digestion steady, rather than spiking. Butter does not do that same favor for an older gut. But feeding your bacteria only works if your gut wall is calm enough to absorb what they produce. When that wall is inflamed and running too fast or too slow, everything else struggles. That is what number 2 addresses. And number 2 sets the stage for the crown food, so stay with me. Number 2 is ginger, fresh ginger root. Ginger has been used for digestion for thousands of years, and modern science now understands why. It helps your stomach empty at a healthy pace and calms the kind of low-grade irritation that builds up in an aging gut. Think of your digestion as a thermostat that has drifted out of calibration over the years, running too slow and too hot. Ginger nudges that thermostat back toward normal, so your stomach moves food along instead of letting it sit and churn. Well-established clinical trials have shown that ginger speeds up stomach emptying and reduces nausea and bloating. This is one of the more solidly documented effects of any common kitchen food, studied carefully enough that hospitals sometimes use ginger for nausea, which tells you the effect is real and not folklore. Here is your protocol. Use about 1 teaspoon of freshly grated ginger root per day, not 1 tablespoon. You can steep it in hot water for 10 minutes to make a simple tea, or grate it into cooked vegetables. Drink it about 20 minutes before a meal to prepare your stomach, or after a meal to ease fullness. Start with half a teaspoon for the first few days to see how you respond. More is not better here. Too much ginger can cause heartburn. A safe and important note. Ginger can thin the blood slightly, so if you take a blood thinner, talk to your doctor before using ginger every day. This one matters. Do not skip that conversation. Pair your ginger tea with the kefir from number 4, spaced about an hour apart. Here is why the spacing matters. The ginger calms and settles your stomach lining first, and then the living cultures in the kefir arrive to a quieter, more welcoming environment where they can settle in comfortably instead of being rushed through. Everything so far smooths, restocks, feeds, and calms your gut. But there is one food that does something none of these can. It is the single most powerful daily lever you have, and it is number 1. Number 1 is cooked leafy greens, and specifically, I mean greens like spinach, kale, and Swiss chard, gently cooked rather than raw. Now let me explain why this humble food crowns the entire list, because the mechanism here is deeper than anything we have covered. Cooked leafy greens carry a special sugar that scientists have found acts as a dedicated fuel source for the friendly bacteria in your gut. It is almost as if these greens were designed to feed your inner city, but that is only half the story. Leafy greens are also one of the richest sources of magnesium in the entire food supply. And magnesium is the mineral that helps the muscles of your intestinal wall contract in a smooth, rhythmic wave. Remember our slow river. Magnesium is the force that keeps the current actually moving. Without it, the water stalls, no matter how well fed the city is. This is why greens sit at the top. They feed the bacteria and they power the current, both at once. No other food on this list does both jobs together. Well-established research on magnesium and dietary nutrients has repeatedly confirmed their central role in healthy bowel function and regularity. Magnesium's role in muscle contraction is textbook physiology, taught in every medical program, and its link to bowel movement is one of the most reliable findings in all of nutrition science. Here is your full protocol, and I want you to get this right. Aim for 1 cup of cooked leafy greens per day. Cooking matters because gentle heat breaks down the tough fibers that an older digestive system struggles with, and it shrinks a large raw pile down to an easy, manageable cup. Steam them for about 5 minutes or saute them lightly until they are soft and dark and tender. Do not boil them to death in a large pot of water because much of the magnesium leaks out into the water you pour down the drain. Steam or lightly saute instead, and keep the liquid if you can. Add a squeeze of lemon at the end because the vitamin C helps your body absorb the iron in the greens. Start with half a cup a day for the first week if greens are new to you, then build to a full cup. The common error is eating them raw in giant salads, which for many older guts is simply too much rough fiber at once, and it backfires into bloating. Now the safe modification, and please listen closely. If you take a blood thinner like warfarin, leafy greens are very high in vitamin K, which directly affects how that medication works. This does not mean you cannot eat greens. It means you must keep your intake steady and consistent, and you must talk to your doctor before changing how much you eat. Consistency is the key word there. And as always, start slow. If cooked greens cause any discomfort, reduce the portion, and sharp pain means stop and check with your doctor. Pair your cooked greens with a healthy fat, like that olive oil or a few slices of avocado, because several of the protective nutrients in greens are only absorbed when a little fat is present. The greens and the fat together unlock the full benefit, and without the fat, you lose much of what you cooked for. And here's the payoff I promised you at the very beginning. Most people spend years chasing digestion fixes one symptom at a time, a pill for bloating here, a laxative there. But the reason cooked leafy greens can change how your gut feels over the next 10 years is that they are the only food that works on both ends of the problem at once. They restock the fuel and they restore the movement. Feed the city, move the river. That is the whole secret, and almost nobody talks about it. Consider a typical case documented in the rehabilitation and nutrition literature. A 74-year-old woman had struggled with chronic bloating and irregular digestion for years. She had done exactly what she was told. She ate more bran, she drank more water, and still she felt heavy and uncomfortable after almost every meal, and she had started avoiding social lunches because of it. Then her approach changed. She began with 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed and a full glass of water each morning. She added half a cup of plain kefir at lunch. She started eating cooled potatoes a few times a week, sipped ginger tea before dinner, and worked up to 1 cup of gently cooked greens each day. She introduced them one at a time, a week apart, so her gut could adjust without being overwhelmed. Within about 6 weeks, the change was measurable. Her bloating had eased dramatically. Her digestion had become regular for the first time in years, and she told her family she finally felt light enough to enjoy a meal out again. Nothing exotic. 5 ordinary foods, used correctly. So here is exactly what to do. Tonight, put 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed and a glass of water by your kitchen sink so you see it first thing tomorrow. This week, buy 1 bottle of plain, unsweetened kefir and start with half a cup a day. Also this week, boil 2 or 3 potatoes and cool them in the fridge for at least 12 hours. Starting today, grate 1 teaspoon of fresh ginger into hot water before 1 meal a day. And this week, steam 1 cup of leafy greens each day, adding them slowly if they are new to you. Now think of someone in your life who has been quietly struggling with their digestion, maybe a parent, a spouse, or a friend who has stopped enjoying their meals. Share this video with them because this is exactly the kind of thing nobody ever sits them down to explain. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 foods you are starting tonight. Your answers decide exactly what I cover next. And if this helped you understand your own body a little better, subscribe to this channel, because that is the whole mission here, giving you the science your appointments never have time for. This video is education, not a diagnosis. Your own doctor knows your history, so bring this list to your next appointment. I'm Laura Bennett. Don't forget to subscribe and live longer.